Hello there to this very special evening on behalf of the Australian Ballet, as tonight we celebrate the launch of this wonderful book, this long-awaited memoir of our beloved David McAllister, Soar, a life freed by dance. My name is Catriona Rowntree, and I was thrilled to be asked to be involved with you this evening in this wonderful event. David asked me to be involved. We have been friends since we first met at Qualia for the Pas de Deux event. It is such a magical location, such a magical event. It may not surprise you to know that David constantly tells me to stop talking, and yet tonight he asked me to have this chat with you. I could not have been more delighted, and I only had one diva request. I wanted to wear a headpiece that David may have worn in one of his ballets, but unfortunately, as you may know, the warehouse is locked down. They couldn't get into it. I also am a little bit upset about the background of where I am right now. Some of you may know me for my work on Getaway, and today I had my first day back filming. It's for a new show, but I am in Warrnambool at the moment, and I'm in a local motel, so I wish I could be in more glamorous locations, much more appropriate for this evening and for the company indeed. It is so lovely that you could be with us. I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land where I am. It is the Gundamara people, and I would like to pay my respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging. So let me tell you a little bit about what we have in store for you this evening. Over the next hour, most importantly, we would like to invite you to ask your questions to both David, but also to Amanda Dunn, the co-writer of the memoir. Amanda is joining us in just a moment as well. So you should have a little section on your device, whatever that may be, that is a Q&A. And what I have asked to do, I'm going old school, I hope you don't mind, but the questions will come through on my phone. I hope that I can get to all of them. I'm going to keep my chat to a minimum, because in just a moment we will welcome both David and Amanda, and David will also do a read from the book, a little excerpt that he has shown, and then we will also get into our Q&A, to our chat. So the book, as I mentioned, Soar, it went on sale today, and if you would like to buy a copy, you can actually go on to the Australian Ballet website, and there is a signed copy waiting for you. I know many of you have pre-ordered the book as well, and of course, if you're unable to do that, it will be available from all good bookstores and online as well. It's all pretty exciting. I have to admit that I did receive a copy around about a week ago. I found the book absolutely riveting. There are quite a few surprises that are thrown in there. For ballet lovers, I think that you will absolutely adore the element of being on the stage, of going to Moscow, of learning a little bit about the other artistic directors as well. I must say that as a mother, I also found this book inspiring, and I shared many elements with my sons as well. I wasn't expecting that to come through. I do believe that that ballet dancers of all ages will also appreciate this wonderful book. But that's my take on the book. Let's get to the stars themselves. So on behalf of the Australian Ballet, I would just like to say thank you so much for your support this evening, and also for all of these events. This is the first time that I've taken part in one of the live events, the virtual events, but I know the Australian Ballet have really embraced this concept, and you have as well. So thank you so much for all of your support and your solidarity. Right, let's welcome right now the most wonderful artistic director. Would you please welcome David McAllister? I feel like saying to the stage. And also we have our wonderful co-writer joining us here this evening, Amanda Dunn. Thank you so much for joining us together tonight. How do you feel?
Good. It's exciting. I can't believe it's actually happening.
Tell me, how have you gone during lockdown, David?
Look, I've got to say, I've actually had quite a nice time. I've rediscovered my love of cooking and baking especially. And while, you know, I think a lot of people have found this a really difficult time, for me, it's been a fantastic dress rehearsal for next year. So I know that there's life at home, and a little bit in the slower lane. So yeah, it's been great. Been great.
And Amanda, have you treasured this time as well?
I have, perhaps in a slightly different way, because I have a 6-year-old, so I've been homeschooling as well as working. So that, you know, like a lot of parents, beg your pardon?
Welcome to hell, remote.
Yeah, there's been a bit of that. So we're pretty excited to be going back to school soon. But generally speaking, we've been okay. We've coped well.
I'm delighted that you can both be here with us this evening. I've got to ask, David, was it a fait accompli that in this final year that you had released a memoir? Tell us a little bit about the background.
I can tell you the story really quickly. I actually got an email from Amanda and said that a friend of hers works for Thames and Hudson, the publishers, and they were wondering whether I would be interested in doing a memoir. And I pretty quickly went back and said, "Oh, I don't think so, but look, you know, I'm happy to talk." And then I spoke to the people at Sally Heath at Thames and Hudson. And basically, I think she appealed to my vanity. And the thing, because I sort of went, I just don't have time. I can't imagine I've got time to write this. And they said, oh, no, you know, you could do it with someone. And of course, you know, as Amanda was the person who contacted me, I went, well, and I think Sally might have teed that up before. And I said, well, that'd be amazing if that's how we can do it. So, yeah, that's how it all came about.
You took the easy route.
Exactly.
Amanda, tell us what it was like working with David.
Oh, look, honestly, I've been a journalist for 20 years, and I can say that this was one of the most enjoyable writing projects I've worked on in my entire career. I mean, I knew David, obviously, because I've written on Ballet quite a bit when I was at the age. So I'd had quite a bit of contact with him and always gotten on very well with him. And I knew that he had a really good story to tell. So it was an absolute pleasure, honestly, to get together with him, mostly weekends, sometimes at home, sometimes at the office, whenever we could, put the dictaphone on, let him speak. And he, you know, he's great raconteur, as you know. And before, it was genuinely an absolute pleasure.
I'm not sure who to direct this question to, but I've found the intro different. In the first chapter, I was expecting a Billy Elliot tale. Okay, I thought, yeah, that's going to be coming. I was thrown a curveball. You will be thrown a curveball when you read the book. I'm just going to come straight out and say this. So, David, you've dated some ladies.
I have, yeah. No, I've been very lucky to have had a couple of really fantastic women in my life. And in fact, most of my really dear close friends, well, not all of them, but a lot of them are, you know, females. And I've always loved being with women. And I think it comes from my growing up with my sister. I mean, obviously my 3 brothers as well, who are very close, but my sister and I have always had a really good bond, and I think I really enjoyed that sort of. And I guess you're in ballet, you're surrounded by women. It's always going to be the way. But yeah, look, I've got to say, when Amanda and I started talking, you know, because we basically just talked, I guess, for about the first 3 or 4 times we got together. I did say, look, you know, I think we need to talk about things that I haven't really talked about before, because otherwise, you know, if it's one of those memoirs like, you know, I grew up, I did ballet, and then I joined the company and I did ballet, and then I left the company and did ballet, you know, it was like this was going to be a very dull book. So I said, you know, I hadn't really talked about my private life much in the public domain, only because, you know, I didn't really think it was that interesting. So I guess we did.
Well, it was my first question to you. So it sure is interesting. And I really treasured that inclusion. I really treasured the struggles that you have spoken about, because most people see you up on a stage. Most people will always see you smiling and joyful, but it's such an authentic account. Was there, Amanda, anything that was off limits?
No, actually, and I think that's one of the reasons we've ended up with a really engaging story. I mean, you know, David, I think one of the most compelling things about David's story is, yes, there is the Billy Elliot story, that's certainly there, But this struggle with David's sexuality, with coming to terms with who he is, being mercilessly bullied at school, you know, growing up in this loving but Catholic family and very much a product of Australia at the time, and him finding his way. It's something I guess we're all familiar with in one form or another. So no, there was nothing off limits. And he, as you know, having read it, he's very frank in lots of ways. And at times he's recounted things that I think have probably been quite painful to talk about. That's all part of his story.
I mentioned that I found as a mother this story comforting and inspiring, and I would read excerpts to my boys. I would also say to my children, don't worry, your school years are over and done with so quickly. You've got such a big life, just like David. So I also really love the fact that this gave you an opportunity, David, to say your thank yous, but particularly to your family and those who have supported you through so much. Was that lovely that you could share that?
Yeah, it really was. And I think the process of sort of going back in your life is quite extraordinary. I mean, I did say to Amanda at the end, it's sort of a bit like therapy. You know, you realize that all these things that you go through, you know, all the way through your life turn you into the person you become. And so it was, you know, I think I always knew that I had a great family supporting me, but I also think I learned so much from them all. And you know, you learn that through this process of going back and remembering, and even through the things that I'd sort of put away in the back of my mind I hadn't really thought about. Bringing it out just reminded me of how lucky I was to have that strong support around me, and you know, both my parents, my brothers and sisters, and you know, just the unit. It was really a very strong and healthy place to grow up.
You also mentioned the artistic directors that guided you through your career as well. What did you learn from them? I loved you dishing about them.
Look, I feel lucky to have actually worked with or performed with in some way all of the artistic directors right back from Dame Peggy Van Prague, our founding director. And it was really, when I got this job, I remember thinking, oh, you know, I'm walking into the footsteps of these extraordinary people. So it was a great experience. But, you know, I think you learn from the things you like about people, but also the things that you disagree with. And I never realised actually how much I learned from both Maine Gilgood and Ross Stretton through their choices and things that they have said about me or to me or about the company. And being then on the other side, being the director, so much of what they said make so much more sense. So I spend a lot of time every so often being in touch with Maynard and going, you know, when you said that, I now understand what you mean. At the time, I wasn't sure, but now I get it.
Amanda and David, I'm very careful not to take up too much time because I know that this evening is about sharing you with our wonderful audience. And just a reminder, if you would like to send those questions through, go for it. I would just like to ask one more thing. Amanda touched on the fact that when you were growing up in Perth as a child, it was such a dramatically different time for ballet, particularly for boys in ballet. There's a mention in the book. There wasn't even a shop that you could go to get ballet shoes, and you ended up having to wear chiffies.
Well, actually, that's part of the extract that you're going to read tonight. But look, there were ballet shops, but I think at the time, it was just not sure whether my parents wanted to actually invest in them. I did get them eventually, but it was a very different time. And look, it was a time where boys just didn't do ballet. I mean, you know, it wasn't in my family or my community sort of experience. So it was a little odd for them, I've got to say.
That is also what makes the book so riveting. Your steely determination from such a young age. I know that we have a lot of dancers who are watching right now. David, what would your advice be to them?
I think, you know, ballet is something that I mean, dancing. I think we all can dance. You know, dance is something that's universal. And, you know, it's so lovely when you walk into a room of kids and someone turns on music, they all start dancing. It's just innate in us. And then, you know, it sort of gets, you know, pushed out of you as you go, you know, on in life. And I guess I always knew that that was my path. There wasn't anything else that I enjoyed doing. And going to school just absolutely made that so much more clearer for me. You know, being on stage, performing, being in front of people, trying to, you know, gain the limelight, that was the thing that just, you know, I loved. So and ballet was the thing that was my, you know, it was my voice. That was the thing that gave me that understanding of who I was in my body.
I know that so many of your, I'll just say loved ones, because I know how much you love everybody involved with the Australian Ballet. They're really struggling at the moment doing their classes online. What's your advice there?
Look, the dancers, I mean, in our company have been extraordinary, and I know dancers all around the world, and in fact, you know, dance students all around the world. It's been a really difficult thing. Dancing in your lounge room is great when you're 3 years old, but it's not great, you know, as a professional artist. And I think the way everyone has pivoted towards the digital direction has been amazing. But we are so looking forward to being back into, you know, the studio, back on stage. And I know that that's happening around the world. But, you know, there's wonderful green shoots. You know, West Australian Ballet have done a season already. I know that, you know, some of the other dance companies are preparing. In Queensland, they've done a performance. So, you know, around the world, in fact, you know, I'm heading to a space after my time at the ballet, and they've already staged 2 full-length ballets. So, you know, I think we can see it. It's just about there.
Just stay the course.
Exactly.
Hold true. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I can see that the questions are coming through. Amanda and David, you'll be thrilled to know loads of questions coming your way. David, I do know that possibly part of the reason why you asked me to help host tonight is, even though I talk constantly, I do like to keep things on time. So without further ado, would you please share with us an excerpt from your wonderful book, Soar?
So, hi everyone. As you know, I'm here. I just thought I'd read this a little bit because it's sort of interesting, because I mean the book is, I guess, about my career, and so I wanted to talk about my first ballet class. And in the book, it's chapter 2. It's called Taking Flight. And if you can imagine this middle child of 5 who's desperately wanting to be in the limelight constantly, a little bit annoying, a bit naughty. I've just gone to school, not really enjoying school, and basically finally getting my parents, after nagging them for pretty much a year, to get me to go to ballet class. So this is chapter 2. Here we go. Black jiffies. There they were, stiff, ill-fitting, and definitely not what proper dancers wore. Even at 7, I'd studied enough ballet to know that. These were soft vinyl slippers with an elastic border, mainly worn by girls. And although they were shaped like a ballet shoe, to my mind at least, they did not have the allure or prestige of the real thing. Yet my mother wouldn't budge. She had, as requested, kitted me out in black football shorts, a white t-shirt from our local Coles variety store. But she was not about to splurge on a pair of kid leather ballet shoes for what was likely to be a passing fancy. Nothing could have encapsulated my parents' attitude to me learning ballet more succinctly than the jiffies. Not hostile, just skeptical. Despite my discontent about the footwear, my excitement was infinite. I put on my ballet outfit for every visitor to our house over the summer break, regaling them excitedly with details about my forthcoming beginners class. Finally, one hot Saturday morning in February 1971, the big day arrived. Mum and Dad deposited me at the Progress Hall in Gildercliff Street, Scarborough, for my first ballet lesson with Miss Evelyn Hodgkinson. It was a convention that female teachers were usually referred to as Miss Surname, and in these days it's Miss First Name, a nod to the art form's mannered, disciplined history. Teachers were called Miss, regardless of whether they were married. In ballet, everyone is young or ought to be. The hall was an old weatherboard building, slightly worse for wear, with a small porch out the front and a court notice board where local businesses or charities posted news of upcoming events or pleas for donations. To one side was a modest kitchen with Arnott's biscuits, Nescafe instant coffee and Bushell's tea bags in the cupboards, which were kept locked at the weekends to protect them from hungry children post-ballet class. As I poked my head around the door, I looked past the 30 young girls all staring at me and noticed with delight there was a stage at one end of the hall, framed by a worn but nonetheless wonderfully theatrical red curtain that was pulled back to reveal a very magical place. From high windows, shafts of light beamed down onto the wooden floor, highlighting little swirls of dust. Then I noticed all the girls looking at me, a great curiosity, a boy who reckoned he was going to learn ballet. And suddenly, shy, I gripped my mother's hand tightly. Miss Hodgkinson was friendly but brisk. "You must be David," she said, approaching with a smile. She seemed old to me, about the same age as Granny, with red hair that was turning grey and disciplined into a neat hairstyle with the help of nightly rollers. She was wearing a short-sleeved knitted jumper and a pleated woolen plaid skirt that showed off a pair of shapely calves, honed, as I later discovered, by a career as a champion Highland dancer. Her voice was deep and gravelly, probably made more so from years of shouting at errand dancers, but her eyes sparkled with good humour. She was an impressive woman, warm but no nonsense, and as it turned out, an excellent teacher. Miss Hodgkinson did not allow parents to stay and watch the class. It was too distracting for the young dancers. My mum was kindly shooed away and told to come back in an hour, as I was absorbed into a sea of pink leotards and buns, Billy Elliot style. The bar in Miss Hodgkinson's class wasn't a bar at all, but stacks of metal chairs, 3 on top of each other, lined up with their backs facing into the hall. As the class began, I learnt a whole new vocabulary, starting with plie and tendu. Miss Hodgkinson demonstrated the first step, then made her way to the reel-to-reel tape recorder, a massive piece of equipment to play the recorded music. The girls all seemed to know the steps, so I had to catch up, and I did so quickly. I remember noticing a lot of side-eye from my classmates as they tried to get a grip on this alien in their midst and access how long he was planning to stay. But I didn't care. It was bliss. Finally, I felt I belonged. Easily distracted at school, here I was a model of concentration, determined to learn all the steps and then perfect them. After the bar exercises, we moved into the centre of the hall, and in a rather strange version of the ladies' first convention, I was placed in the back row, because I was the boy. After each exercise, the front row ran to the back, and the new set of dancers had their time in the limelight. I approached the front line, when my turn finally came, with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. I was nervous about not yet knowing the steps, and there had been some comfort in being surrounded by all the girls who knew what they were doing. But I also looked forward, in my signature style, to showing off under the teacher's gaze. The exercise at the front was a practice for the spotting that is so important in turns. We had to focus on one point at the front of the classroom, then shuffle our feet around in a tight circle, leaving our eyes to the front as long as possible, and then quickly turning our heads and returning our eyes to the original spot. Miss Hodgkinson praised me for doing the exercise well, and I was thrilled. By now, deeply in love with the class and having the opportunity to do real ballet rather than my own version in front of the television. Finally, we learned how to do reverence, a curtsy for the girls and a bow for me, before Miss Hodgkinson opened the door back to the real world, where another noisy group of aspiring ballet dancers were waiting for their turn in the limelight. Miss Hodgkinson made a point of taking me to my mother herself. "He did very well," she told her. "We look forward to seeing you next week." I was beaming with pride and desperately wanted to show Mum and Dad, who was waiting for me in the car, what I had learnt. But it was Saturday morning, which meant wrangling our large brood for the chore of grocery shopping, so it would have to wait. As soon as I got to the car, Dad asked, "How did it go?" And before I could answer, he added, "You know you don't have to go back if you don't want to." It was an offer he repeated every Saturday morning, perhaps in hope, perhaps just bewilderment in the coming weeks. But eventually he stopped, as every Saturday I reported that class was wonderful and I couldn't wait to get back. So that's how it all began.
Bravo. That was so wonderful. Amanda and I were giggling all the way. You just made that come alive. It's such a compliment to you, Amanda, as well, to write that just with so much energy so colourfully. I love that tiny element where you said watching yourself on the TV when you were dancing at home. And just to let people know what you revealed in the book, you weren't actually watching the TV, you were watching your reflection in the glass.
Yeah, I think as a performer, you always have to be a little self-obsessed.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Well, you will be thrilled to know that the questions are coming through thick and fast. So thank you so much for sending through the questions. I was going to say to you, you cannot ask a silly question because I pretty much have cornered the market on that. I won't even begin to tell you. What I will begin with is all of these wonderful questions that you are sending through. So here is a very simple one initially from Kate, and that it says, do you plan to stay involved with the company when you finish as a director, David?
I guess the short answer is yes. The longer answer is not getting in anyone's way, because I know, as you know, as an artistic director or a former artistic director, you know, you want to give the new person who's going to be wonderful, David Hallberg, the time for him to actually take control and be in charge. But very generously, Kenneth Watkins has asked me to be an ambassador for the Plan Giving, the bequest program. And look, you know, there's certain little bits and pieces that I'm sort of still going to be doing. Next year we've got the regional tour, and I was doing a piece for the regional tour this year, which is now gone into next year. So look, I'll be around, and I'll be definitely out the front, being a bit of a fangirling everyone. So yeah, I'll be around.
We look forward to it. Amanda, Leith would like to know, what did you learn about ballet that you didn't possibly already know before writing this book?
I learned quite a bit, actually. I mean, I learned specifically about David in ballet, if you know what I mean. I mean, I have, as I said, I've had, you know, a lifelong interest in ballet, and I have written a lot about it as a journalist. But I suppose there's a chapter in the book where David talks about a series of injuries, terrible injuries, actually, that he had when he finally became a principal artist. And a couple of them very nearly ended his career. And it really, his determination to have surgery, several surgeries, and then to go back into rehab, to get back into the classroom. At one point, he has an entire year off dancing, which is amazing, really. When you think about the physical demands on the body, it really just hammered that home to me again about the body as an instrument, I guess.
Warren would like to know, David, he's a classic. Did you ever get to meet Nureyev? And if so, what was he like?
A couple of experiences with Nureyev. The first one was when I was a child extra and I got sacked by Nureyev because we were too short. So it was not my greatest moment. But then very much later in life, he came on a farewell tour to Australia, and I danced in two cities. First of all, in Adelaide with Fiona Tonkin. We did the La Favorita Pas de Deux. And then towards the end of the tour, Danilo Radojevic was actually on the tour with Mariana Tchaikovsky. They were both principals of the American Ballet Theatre. And they were doing the Tarantella, which Elizabeth and I did in Moscow. And Danny unfortunately hurt his knee. So the last point, I had to go up and dance there. And in fact, that was Adelaide. And in fact, the first part of it was in Brisbane that we danced. And so so I did Tarantella with Mariana for a couple of performances just at the very end of the tour. But
Dad,
Rudolph was...
Give us the goss.
So
what was the way of life?
He was really... he was amazing. Like, his knowledge was extraordinary. Unfortunately, he wasn't particularly well at that time. And I think after all those years of being, you know, inspired by him dancing, it was a bit of a shame to actually see him at that point in his career. But look, you could tell that he still saw everything. And he made a point of, he sat on the side of the stage, watched every single dancer. He would have comments for you afterwards. And, you know, I guess at that point he was really clinging on to, you know, to be able to share what he did on stage. But yeah, he was an icon of dance, even as his life was sort of coming to an end.
And you mentioned the Grand Tarantella. Lyndall has a question about that. Lyndall, I'm going to let you know now. You are going to love this book because you go into dancing that the Grand Tarantella. Lyndall would like to know, what was that like, preparing and performing that?
It was extraordinary. We were so lucky. It was actually Lizzie that said that, you know, we should do Tarantella. She'd seen, I think, maybe Walter and Maria dance it, and no one really had ever been able to do it in Australia. I know a couple of other dancers had wanted to, and so we asked, well, Maina asked Walter if we were able to do it, and I think he came and watched class to sort of check us out. And then he said yes, and the only time we could learn it was during the weekends, because he was running, you know, a fine dining restaurant, and Sunday was the only day off. So there for about, you know, about 5 or 6 weeks, we just never had a day off. We went in on Sunday and learnt it, and it's a really hard piece. It's 7 minutes of sort of gut-wrenching jumping, and it was the hardest thing. It still was the hardest thing I ever did. And yet it was also the most rewarding and exciting and dramatic physical feat. And you always got to the end of it and felt like you've achieved something. And yeah, I've never done anything like it, and it became such a signature piece for both Elizabeth and myself when we went to Russia, that we danced it a lot, and it never got easier. It got, but it was always a thrill and an exciting thing to get through, and to really, you know, some shows better than others, but always you felt like you'd achieved something.
What has been your proudest moment as both an artistic director and also a dancer?
Oh gosh, so many. I think, you know, the big opening nights in both director and dancer. You know, when as a director, when you commission something, you know, it's a germ of an idea that then, you know, becomes this fully fledged created beauty that happens on stage. And I watched so many people have that experience, and, you know, luckily many of them were great successes. And, you know, starting with Graham Murphy Swan Lake, it was, you know, it was a gift. And, you know, every commission after that sort of lived up to that level, or had to live up to that level. But I think, you know, that's the excitement. Always, you know, the opening night when it goes well and the dancers are really, you know, happy with their performance and the audience respond. It's the most thrilling and exciting things. And I remember the opening night of the Sleeping Beauty, which was the first thing that I'd choreographed. It was a culmination of that. I remember saying to someone, "This is the best I've felt about something since I stopped dancing," because, you know, you get that high when you get the adrenaline, I guess, when you're a dancer. But, you know, when you're sort of watching from the front, it's a different feeling. But that particular performance was, yeah, quite amazing.
I have a question which I think many of us are wondering. Did Miss Hodgkinson ever have the opportunity to see you in full flight with the Australian Ballet?
There's a bit of a funny story about this, because when I went to the ballet school, Miss Hodgkinson was really pleased that I got in, but she thought I was going to come back and run her school, and she sort of had a plan that she'd retire and I'd take over. And then I got into the company, and I was pretty excited about dancing. And she was always a bit miffed, I've got to say. And when I did go to Perth, I always used to invite her to come to the ballet, and, you know, be sort of expectantly waiting, you know, to see what she was going to say at the end of it. And she was always fairly nonplussed. She never was that complimentary. And, you know, I'd be sort of coming back and she'd go, "Oh yeah, it was sort of interesting. I didn't really like the ballet," or, you know, and I don't think she ever got over the fact that I never came back and took over the school. So she was always very supportive, but she wasn't a great fan, I don't think, of me or the ballet. She wanted me to be her 2IC.
I have a question for both of you. Having lived such a rich life, how long does a book like this take to put together?
Amanda.
Well, we actually did it reasonably quickly. I mean, I knew a little bit about David, especially his professional career, before I started, as I say, because I've sort of known him for a few years and written a few profile pieces of him. But I think we started in September. Is that right, David?
Yeah,
September,
that's when
and
it
then
started.
we went through. We were very lucky. We got it all done before the first lockdown. So I think, and then it went through, you know, quite rigorous rewriting and editing process. So yeah, I think probably within 6 months. But it was constant meetings, and often we'd get together for an hour or two and just talk and just put the dictaphone on and David would talk.
Really?
Yeah, hard to imagine, isn't it?
That. Hey, David, here's a personal question. I think you'll quite like it. Apparently, you are known for being part of a power couple with Wesley, and who is also considered a legend. How has Wesley and your lives together influenced you and your approach? And how do you think possibly you have influenced him as well?
Well, look, meeting Wesley was such a turning point in my life because I guess I was so caught up in you know, my job and the ballet, and you know, I had great friends, but I just sort of didn't ever really, you know, have that sort of life balance, I guess. And we met, and this is how, you know, completely switched off I was. I didn't even realize that he was sort of, you know, flirting, and I didn't realize that we were dating. I thought we were just, you know, it was another friend, and that was really nice. And I tell this story in the book about how, you know, it was Richard Evans that sort of said, oh, you know, where are you off to? And I said, I'm, you know, going for dinner with Wesley. He said, oh, you're going on a date? And I was like, no, we're just, you know, having dinner. And then I said that to Wesley. He's like, oh, Richard thought we were having a date. And he went, yeah, this is a date. And I was like, oh my God. So I think I've learned so much about, well, you know, he in some ways was the reason that I, you know, sort of talked to my dad and said I've met someone and he's a bloke. And you know, I think he's so intelligent, he's so creative, he's so you know, passionate about what he does. I've learned so much about his you know, his heritage and his career, and he's made my choices and thoughts about, you know, the ballet company and what we do. He's, you know, given me so many sort of not ideas so much as, you know, challenges. He's a great you know, provocateur, and so I think he's made me think much more about what I've done since we've been together at the ballet, and the importance of what we do. And it's not just, you know, entertaining people, it's art, and you know, you have to be saying something with what you're doing, and I think that's been a real, I've learned a lot about that from him, you know, the importance of the art, not just, you know, the mechanism of it.
I know that I speak on behalf of everybody who adores you. It's just lovely to see you so happy, and particularly after reading Soar and the many challenges that you've gone through. And you're so hard on yourself, David. You're so hard on yourself. I am so upset to say I can see that the clock is ticking, so I'm going to go for some rapid fire ones here, just to try to get some more questions in. Sheila would like to know, Amanda, having written this book, is there a moment, a memory that's really had an impact on you from David's story?
Look, I think my favourite part, there's two things I would say. One is his trip to Russia with Lizzie in the competition, which is amazing, and it's just an extraordinary story, and reads, parts of it read like an international spy thriller, mixed with a ballet competition, and it's just wonderful. There's also a really poignant part in the book when David has decided he wanted to be the artistic director, but his mum, who has leukemia, is dying, and literally he gets the phone call to say, he's back and forth to Perth, and he gets the phone call to say that she has died, just as he has, you know, got this application in under the wire. So I found that really quite emotional to write it up. It's an amazing story, and it just reminds you, as I have learned so often in writing people's stories, is that you never know what's going on for people.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw one in because I'm sorry, but it makes me laugh. I feel that being in TV, that there were elements to your story that I could relate to. You know, we work in an aesthetic medium. Let's talk about your schnods.
Tell them the story. Tell them the story.
Well, look, you know,
Teacher.
I never really, I mean, I knew I had a, you know, pretty sizable honk, but it wasn't until I joined the company, and literally the first thing that Maina said to me was, we were walking down the corridor and she stopped and she said, "Ooh, you're one of the new boys." And I said, "Oh yes, you know, my name's David." And she said something about, "Ooh, maybe we should think about a nose job." And I just like went, and then, you know, we started to sort of pass, and then she went, "Let's see what it looks like on stage." So so that was it. That was my first meeting with Maina. And after that, you know, I sort of had this thing about my nose. I would never be not in, you know, straight in front of Maina. I would never go into profile. And eventually, I mean, you know, obviously it passed because she never mentioned it again. But yeah. And it was my sort of passport into a few different roles. And in fact, in the beginning of the book, we talk about Beyond 12. And you know, one of the reasons I guess I fitted into that group with Paul Damasson and Kelvin Coe is because we all had quite, you know, good hooters. So, yeah.
I can see that there were no questions about that was coming through. And as you can see, there is nothing that David doesn't talk about in the book. I have from Matt, this is almost an easy one for you. Did you ever think about pursuing another career? Anything else tickle your fancy?
Look, there was never a plan B. I literally didn't have a plan B. I mean, I used to like drawing and art at school, and I did apply because, you know, I'd done my leaving. So I applied for fine arts at UWA, but I didn't even check to see whether I got in. And I'm sort of pleased I wouldn't have been good. So I think I picked the right path.
Did you ever have the opportunity to meet Baryshnikov?
I did actually. The first scholarship I went on, which was the Christmas Kids, we did class with American Ballet Theatre, and Baryshnikov was in class. And I remember sort of trying to turn into the wall at the back of class to get out of his way as he was doing all these amazing trick turns and things. But yeah, he was a very nice. I mean, you know, we were just nobody from nowhere, but he was very, you know, warm and friendly, and he was the director as well as the, you know, leading dancer of the company at the time. So.
This is a really tough one from Maria. Do you have a favourite pas de deux partner, and why?
Oh, look, I would have to say no. I mean, I dance with extraordinary people, and in different ballets, different people, and you know, every person you dance with gives you something. And I was so lucky to have, you know, so many wonderful partners. And I guess, you know, Lizzie and I spent a lot of time together dancing, especially around that time of Moscow, and we were sort of seen as such a sort of couple. They even, you know, referred to us as the Torval and Dean of ballet. You know, it was the 80s. But look, I feel very lucky to have danced with so many people, and shared really special experiences on stage with all of them.
Good answer. Very, very diplomatic answer, and that is why we love you. Debbie would like to know, was there ever a ballet that nearly broke you physically and or mentally?
No, I mean, I always found the challenging ones, and I think it was after Tarantella, you know, because that was such a stamina piece. I often used to get other pieces like that to dance. And I always used to find it really sort of exciting. It was more there were a few that I can honestly say there was probably only about 2 or 3 ballets I danced that I didn't like. Most of the time I liked what I was doing and it was great, but there were a couple that I went, oh, if I never have to do that again, it'll be too soon. So, and I'm not going to tell you what they were.
Both as a dancer and an artistic director, were you ever tempted to go overseas?
Look, I did
with another, you know what I mean? Yes.
I did
with another.
I did consider it twice actually in my career. Once before I was promoted, because I thought that Maynard just wasn't interested. And then again, a couple of years later, in sort of about 91, where I thought, well, I'm a principal, maybe I should go overseas because, you know, that's what you do. And then I went overseas and looked around and sort of went, oh, this is all a bit boring. I think I'd be doing better work at home. And then as artistic director, I mean, look, when I got the job, I always thought I'd do about 10 years and then I'd, you know, flip off somewhere else and, you know, try it somewhere else. But after a while, I look, quite honestly, you never feel like you complete this job. And now, you know, here I am 20 years later. Do I want to direct another company? Not particularly. And I know now from seeing, you know, many other companies around the world, it would be hard to direct a company that has the talent, the resources, and, you know, and really the opportunities that the Australian Ballet does. So, you know, but never say never. I mean, I'm not sort of dead yet. So who knows?
But I love the fact that you mentioned, as you go into the book as well, you did explore the opportunity, and the great thing about that is that no stone left unturned. You try it, you look for it, and then you realize, I'm living the life. This is
and I was
the
such a, I
ultimate.
mean, I'm such a, you know, product of the Australian Ballet. I mean, the first ballet I ever saw was the Australian Ballet Live, and I just, I mean, you know, I was lucky in my career. I did, thanks to Maynard, actually get lots of opportunities to dance overseas. You know, we went to Russia 5 times, and then I danced with the company in overseas places, and then I spent 3 months in Canada at the National Ballet of Canada, and I danced with the Birmingham Royal Ballet, and so I did really have periods. And just at the time that I'd start getting a little bit itchy feet, I think Maynard used to know, and so, you know, she did it for all of us. You know, she'd send us engaged and excited.
That's a good artistic director for you, just to sense that, to have those instincts about your team. I have such a timely question from Kelly, and she would like to know, what is your advice to young boys who are dancing and who have experienced bullying? I know that for you, it was rotten. It was rotten.
I think the thing that I would say to any young boy out there who's having a hard time with, you know, their classmates or colleagues or whatever, is don't do anything that, you know, you don't listen to those people if it takes you off your path. You know, for me, ballet was the one thing that I wanted to keep doing, and no one could have stopped me. And I think they made me stronger in that connection. So I think follow your dreams, follow your heart. It will all come to an end. You know, school doesn't last forever. And quite honestly, as you get older, everyone becomes a lot more interested in people being different than trying to fit in and be the same as everyone else. So I think, you know, those early teenage years are probably the hardest. You know, they're sort of from 10, 11, 12 through to, you know, 15, 16. And for me, I was in an all-boys school. When the girls came, it was so much better. The girls made life, you know, worth living. So so I do think, you know, it is that thing, as you said about your own, you know, boys, it gets better. You just got to, you know, get through it and tough it out.
Kelly, that was the message that I got from the book I mentioned. I went straight to my own sons and shared that with him, just what David said then. School does not last forever. School does not last forever. Don't worry about it. Do what makes your heart sing. Is there a funny moment that you would like to share from being on stage? I'm sure there are many, but is there one that really stands out for you?
Well, I did a commando role on the Bolshoi stage when I was dancing Don Quixote there. That was pretty funny. I didn't think so at the time, but oh my God. I've never bounced as much as I did on that. I sort of went on the floor, did a commando role, came out and kept dancing. So it was, yeah, that was pretty funny.
David, is there a role that you'd never got to play that you would have loved to?
Not that I would have loved to, but you know, I was never Onegin in Onegin, and I'm actually really happy about that because I would have been terrible. And I never did Petruchio in Taming the Shrew, which was another good thing because I would have been not so good in it. I think I knew the things that I could do, and I knew what I couldn't do, and And sometimes I did, you know, things that I got away with, but probably wasn't the best at. But yeah, no, I never really felt like I missed out on anything.
Is there a coach that particularly stands out in your mind that really helped you?
Well, I mean, originally it was Kelvin, you know, from my younger years and going to Moscow. But I've got to say, in my latter years, it was a beautiful guy, Jonathan Kelly, who is our ballet master and a real prince. And he taught me how to be a prince. And then Igor Gaisina, who was, she was our sort of principal ballet mistress, and she was a meticulous coach. And for a woman, she knew how to coach a man. It was really extraordinary. So I learned a lot from all of them, really.
I'm so glad you had the chance to say their names. That's a great question. Thank you for sharing that one. Did you have a favourite role that you just loved to perform?
Yeah, I did love doing Basilio, I've got to say. It sort of sat on me like a comfortable, you know, suit. I loved doing Mercutio. I loved Mercutio. I mean, I did Romeo too, and I loved doing that, but Mercutio, I think, was my role in that ballet. You know, all of the ones that I did a lot, I guess, you know, Franz in Coppelia, Franz in Coles in La Fille Margade. Yeah, I pretty much loved everything I was doing. I'm just a bit of a bumhead.
And I have a final question as our time slowly does tick down and run out like sands through the hourglass, I feel like adding. What is your next project that comes from Amanda?
So my next project, which actually I was working on today, is I'm doing a production of Swan Lake for the Finnish National Ballet. And I was commissioned by Madeleine Onne, who's the director there. And we were baby directors when we started off. She was a former principal dancer of the Royal Swedish Ballet, and we both started at the same time. So it was sort of kismet. We've been really great friends all the way through our careers. And she got the job in Finland, and I rang her and said, you know, what are you thinking? And she's like, I want to commission a Swan Lake because the company turns 100, like a centenary, in 2022. And Swan Lake was the first ballet they did. So then we talked about that. And she said, you know, I really want a Swan Lake, sort of like what you did with Sleeping Beauty. And I was like, oh, is she trying to tell me something? So so I said to Wesley, what do I do? You know, and he said, look, just put down some ideas in an email and send it to her. And, you know, that's how it started. So yeah, that's my gig when I leave the ballet.
Exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm working with Gabriela Tilasova again, who's just extraordinary. So it's going to be lavish and beautiful and yeah, very exciting.
I don't know if it's weird to say, but I'm so excited for your next project. And you're so young.
Oh, not so young.
I have a question that a lot of people have asked. I'm just going to squeeze this one in. What is that photo behind you?
I know. See, this is, I'm just going to do a bit of a tip. This is the beautiful Matilda Tomasetti, taken by Lisa Tomasetti. And I wanted to sit in front of this photo, apart from the fact that I love it. And Lisa's a great friend and a wonderful photographer. She also took this beautiful photo on the back cover. So I thought it was fitting that, but I was under a Tomasetti with the Tomasetti on the back cover.
That is such a lovely tribute. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I must say a huge thank you for joining us for this very special hour of power. Thank you for putting up with me. I had to charge my computer, all of these things that I knew I had to charge the computer, the phone in the motel's been ringing. So thank you for being patient with me as well. And both Amanda and David, thank you so much for your time. Did you enjoy this?
It was amazing.
It was fantastic.
It's lovely, Amanda, that you've also had the opportunity to be here and revel in this moment as well. It must be a wonderful feeling.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it was a great project, and I'm really thrilled for David that he's got his story out there. It's a great story.
It is a real read. Final words from you, David?
Look, I literally could not have done this without Amanda, and she's just been so extraordinary to work with, and I've loved it. And I mean, I always loved her writing when she was writing about the company. And you know, journalists that write about dance, you're always a little bit, you know, on edge. And the first thing she said to me, which was so lovely, she said, you know, as a journalist, I shouldn't say this, but I've always really liked you. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get on. So we did. But I I also want to thank everyone at Thames and Hudson who've just been
Yes.
so extraordinary. I mean, they've put up with, you know, my sort of crazy not knowing what the hell I was doing, and they've just been amazing. Sally Heath and all of the people at Thames and Hudson, they're just amazing. So a huge thank you to them too.
Absolutely, second that.
Well, that is just wonderful. So don't forget that Soar has just been released. If you would like to go to the Australian Ballet website, you will find autographed copies from David. But of course, you can also get the book at all good bookstores and online. And once again, I would just like to say thank you again from the Australian Ballet for all of your support. And I know that I speak on behalf of everyone. I can't wait to see you back in the flesh, in the auditorium with our dancers up on the stage, just reveling and admiring in all of that talent and skill. So Amanda, thank you so much. David, we just wish you all the best and enjoy this incredible time.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all. We will see you very soon. Goodbye for now.